Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to season 2 of Scrum Call. In this season, we are diving deeper into the real world of Agile through engaging interviews, thought provoking articles, and insightful discussions. We are bringing you stories from Agile practitioners who have faced challenges, found solutions, and celebrated success. So, whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, tune in to learn, grow, and connect with a broader Agile community. You can find Scrum Call on all major podcast platforms and even on YouTube. So, with that, let's get started. Hello, and welcome, folks, to another episode of Scrum Call. Today, I have Santosh Akella with me, and Santosh is an L&D professional and an e-learning designer. Apart from his work, he is also keynote speaker at several events, about 150 events across India. He helps individuals, managers, and leaders build a coaching mindset and a leadership style. He holds a BTech in electronics and engineering, an MA in organizational psychology, and 2 PG diplomas in learning and development. In addition to having more than 15 internationally accredited certifications in training and coaching. So that's one hell of a resume. Santosh, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi, Shishir. Thank you. Thank you for having me on this show. It's glad to be on this show and speaking with you today.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure. And those of you watching, you can definitely go ahead and scan the QR code that you can see on Santosh's side. It will take you directly to his LinkedIn profile. Feel free to connect with him and speak more about it. Now, as you know, Scrum Call is in its second season, and here we are focusing on real world Agile, right? So whether you are new to Agile, whether you are a seasoned professional, you just want to know more, or you're curious about this, whether you're a team member, doesn't matter. Agile is for everyone. Agile is common sense, right? So now, that being said, today's topic is going to be around leadership and coaching, not just in the context of Agile, but in a slightly broader sense, because leadership, is something which is omnipresent across the organization in many different ways. Whether you're a team member or whether you're leading a team, leadership and coaching does play a part in one way or the other. And that is what we'll be delving into in today's episode. So with that, I'll straight go to Santosh and ask him one very important question. So Santosh, tell us something about yourself that many people don't know, but they should know. What would that be?
Hey, Shishir, thank you for asking that. One thing, I think 40% of them know and 60% of them don't know. Being a South Indian, I tend to watch a lot of movies, especially in theaters.
What kind of movies do you watch?
I watch a lot of movies. Frankly speaking, I typically love the South Indian commercial movies where you have a lot of action and a lot of entertainment and all these things.
Got it. So one has to unwind after a hard day's work, right? That makes sense. All right. So, getting into the meat of the matter, so to speak, right? So let's start off with a popular misconception that I feel a lot of people have. Let's talk about the difference between a leader and a manager. All right. Now, I'll give my take about it, and then I would like to hear what's your take on this. Now, I have a very clear distinction in mind about a leader and a manager. Now, typically, a manager would be someone who is more focused on the execution, on the task side of things, getting things done, right? They always have their eye on what the tasks are, what needs to be done, who needs to do. So very, very tactical and execution focused. Whereas I see a leader more from a strategic standpoint, someone who, yes, they are bothered about the execution because at the end of the day, some work needs to get done. But beyond that, a leader also is someone who is looking at the broader picture, the end goal, and also looking at how the team members can benefit along the journey? How can they be developed along the way? Now, are they two different people? Well, it depends. A leader could also be a manager, right? But a manager, can they be a leader? Yes, they can. And it's two sides of the same coin. It just depends on the situation. Right? We can't just say, oh, this person is just a manager, that person is just a leader. I think that would be a wrong way to go about it. That's my take, but please, I would want to hear from you.
Sure, Shishir. So thank you for bringing this very valid point, because people need to understand the distinction between a leader and a manager. And as you rightly put out, a leader leads with a vision, and a manager kind of manages and gets the things done. So not just this, I'd like to have a third side to this coin. Okay, you look at a coin not just two sides, but let's look at it in 3D and see what's there in leadership.
Now that's a new perspective. Go on.
Yeah, sure. Now, what is this third perspective? So we have spoke about leader, manager. Now, what I would say is anyone is a leader. Even a manager can act as a leader. So we have been speaking about leadership as a role, but I'd like to have a mindset shift from thinking of a leader as a role to leader as a behavior.
That's interesting.
What is this? Yeah. What is this? So, I think most of us know about this very popular anecdote of the janitor in NASA. Let me tell that for our audience once again. Now, there is this janitor in NASA. Some of our Indian scientists once go for a conference at NASA, and then they meet a janitor in the restroom cleaning the washrooms and all those things, and then they meet him and they ask him, what do you do here? He says, I help NASA launch satellites. These people were perplexed. Yeah, these people were perplexed, and they ask him, what, you help people launch satellites? He says, yes, I do that because if I keep the washrooms clean, if there is this hygiene, somewhere I am contributing to that higher purpose of what we're doing this.
Beautiful.
And this is exactly, and this is exactly leadership as a behavior than leadership as a role. You can be an entry-level person in an organization, you can be a manager, you can be a team lead, you can be a vice president, or you can be the CEO. But you need to have this behavior of ownership.
Correct. A mindset.
So one of the most, a mindset.
Right.
So one of the important behaviors of a leader or a manager is, manager wants to get things done just because they have to be done. Whereas a leader owns the thing, has a vision, looks at the big picture. And one more important thing is, leader also leads from the front. Leader takes that ownership.
Correct.
And this is where I'd like to tell one more anecdote, which is again related to space. Okay, I don't know why I'm fascinated about the space thing, but I heard this story from the great late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, where he was narrating this beautifully, where he says that in around 1979, ISRO tried to launch SLV-3, Satellite Launch Vehicle 3, and ultimately that became a failure and it landed up into Bay of Bengal. Then that time APJ Abdul Kalam was the project director for that entire SLV-3 mission. They were so worried to face the media, to face everyone outside the world and things like that. And then the director of ISRO, Satish Dhawan, the chairman of ISRO, he stepped out, he faced the media, he faced the failure, and he said that, okay, this failed, we're gonna make it another attempt. And when this was successful, taking ownership. And when this was successful eventually, the SLV-3 mission, then Satish Dhawan asks APJ Abdul Kalam to go there and say that yes, this has been a success.
Right.
So leaders should also take ownership. Yes. Leader should lead from the front. One, leader should take the ownership, and a leader should have the behavior, not the role. Leadership is not a role, it's a behavior.
Perfect.
So I think these are the differences between a leader and a manager.
I really like the way you put it forward, because you're so right. When, at the surface level, when we just think about the difference, or we just even think about leadership, everyone thinks the moment leader, okay, a CEO or a project manager or a team lead, these are the kind of designations that come into the mind, right? But understanding that it's beyond that name tag, it's beyond the designation, it's what's in your mind and what's in your heart is what actually makes a leader. The moment you think that I need to do this, not because I need to do this, but because me doing this properly leads to something bigger, I think that is where the tipping point, comes in. So we'll delve into that, because there I have a question specifically for team member level leadership. I'll come to that. But before that, I have another important one, right? Now,
Sure.
we are talking about leadership, but there's also an aspect of nurturing in leadership, which is coaching, right? Now, if I were to just delve in that a little bit, how does coaching get coupled with leadership? Like in your experience now, you're someone who's into this, you're teaching people, right? So I want to hear from you. How are these two things together? Are they again like flavors in an ice cream, for example, that go well together, or it could be separate? What's your take on it?
Sure, Shishir. Thank you for asking that. And okay, even before we jump into that, I'll just quickly add one, tie this discussion that we had till now to Scrum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
When we speak about leader and being owners, taking ownership, we say also in Scrum, each team member is the owner. Despite not having the Scrum Master on the call, they are asked to join the DSM, the daily stand-up meet, and conduct their meeting on their own.
Right.
And it ties back to the principles of Agile and principles of Scrum.
Right.
Okay. So now moving to the current question, coaching, how can a leader act as a coach?
Right.
I do give this note at multiple places titled The Leader as a Coach. Now, what is this leader as a coach, and why should someone who is leading, or even again, I'll just come back and say, since we have this premise that leadership is a behavior,
right,
even every team member can be a coach.
Interesting.
How?
Yeah.
Today we are dealing with advancements in technology, day in and day out. Everything is changing. The CI/CD pipelines are changing.
Right.
There was a time when we would deploy code manually, but now that happens on the go.
Correct.
So with these advancements, every day we are learning from each other, irrespective of the role. Even a manager can learn from the team member. A Scrum Master can learn from the team member.
Right.
A team member can learn from the team lead. Two team members can learn together.
Correct. Here.
All these things are happening. And this is where coaching leadership style or leader being a coach comes into place.
Right.
Now how should be done? We have seen the why. How this can be done? I use this framework of LEAD, L-E-A-D.
Mm-hmm.
What is LEAD? L stands for listen.
The most important one.
Yes.
You got to listen to make things happen.
Listen attentively. Listen to understand the intent. Don't listen just for the sake of listening. Don't hear. Listen. Listen to others.
Or don't listen to reply.
Yes, don't listen to reply.
Yeah.
Now this listening again goes back to the Scrum team listening to the product owner, the Scrum team members listening to the Scrum Master, the Scrum team members listening to each other in the daily stand-up calls. That's listen. In lead. Now, the second letter in lead, E. E stands for empathize.
Right. Another important aspect.
Empathy is Yeah, empathy is one of the most important things, whether it comes to the product design. I mean, the wireless earplugs that you are wearing now, someone must have thought that, okay, all these wires are clumsy.
Yeah.
People are feeling so sad about it. They end up untying everything. There was empathy in that design.
Or
Now,
or
right?
or look at it this way, like someone who would have pulled out their wired earphones, and while untangling, they would have thought, this is so frustrating. If I'm finding it this way, I don't know how many people out there are feeling this way. Oh my God, there's a business opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how things come. When we face some problem, I want to solve it. And that's where empathy comes into play. And empathy just doesn't mean thinking about just our customers. Empathy about towards your team members.
Correct.
That is E, empathy.
Right.
And then L-E-A. A in lead is asking the right questions.
Yeah, another important thing.
Yeah, we are so drowned in answering questions that we forget to ask the right question. And this is especially important for Scrum Masters. If they are not asking the right questions, they are not going to get the right result.
Correct.
And finally, D in lead, which is develop. Now, how do we develop? Two kinds of development. One, we have to develop more leaders. How? By giving right feedback, constructive feedback. Feedback is very important. And,
True.
And that's where our Scrum retrospective calls also come into play.
Yeah.
So all these things, L-E-A-D, listen attentively, empathize with people, with your products, ask right questions to your team member, to your product owner, to your customers, and then finally D, develop more leaders and also develop people by giving feedback. This is the lead framework. If someone follows this,
right,
they can be a better coach, the leader as a coach. And this keynote, I have like 45-minute keynote on this that I go more in depth into that during my keynotes, but this is in
the framework.
This is the gist of it. Yeah, this is the framework.
Got it. And it makes a lot of sense because, to lead, you need to first listen. You need to get clarity by asking. You need to develop because you can't be a single person running the show. You'll become a bottleneck, right? So that's an interesting facet. And I'm sure that 45-minute will go into such depths that it will just give a lot of clarity. So moving on to the next and the last one that I have for today is, and we touched upon this as well, right? Now, leadership at a team member level. Now, if it doesn't matter who you are, if you're in a team, you're a fresher, you're a little experienced, heavily experienced, developer, QA, designer, doesn't matter who you are, but you're at a team member level, you're the one who's executing the work. How can you be a leader? How can you be a coach? So if you could delve a little deeper into that, right? How can we break this notion thinking, I am just an executioner, I just do the work and I go home? How do we break that mold?
Sure. I think throughout this particular podcast, we have been working on the premise that leadership is a behavior. Now, how do we create that behavior in people, especially in team members? I would say 2 to 3 things. One is first to create belongingness.
Right.
If I ask you one question, I think you have been asking me a lot of questions. I will ask you, a question.
Right.
Where do you think you feel that you most belong to? I mean, what characteristics does that ecosystem should have in order for you to feel that you belong there?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. And I feel a place where I am given the autonomy to function and execute, given the clarity of my role. So I can take some calls on my own. I don't have to ask someone, hey, I'm going to do this. Can I do this? So I can take that call on my own, where I can showcase my creativity, my ingenuity, and where my opinions and thoughts are respected. I mean, it may not be that whatever I'm saying is the truth or is the right thing, but at least I'm heard. and someone would be there to sort of guide me, saying that, hey, this is a great idea, you can make it better by doing ABCD, right? So I'm heard, I'm respected, and I'm given the autonomy. I think that would be an amazing place to be.
Absolutely. Right now, I have used my leader as a coach approach, but
Yeah, see?
yeah, yeah. So creating that belongingness is very important. Where you
Right.
give the autonomy to people, where you give that creative edge to people, let them be creative, let them feel heard, and most important thing, give them the psychological safety. Psychological safety is very important.
Right. So, if I were to just pick on the psychological safety aspect, right? Now, this again is something which is as individualistic as the people we deal with, because every person has their own version of it, right? There might be someone who would be very vocal during meetings, but if you do a one-on-one, they may not be as, vocal. On the flip side, there are people during meetings, retros and all, they hardly say a line or two. Sometimes you can't even hear them. You go on a one-on-one and they have one full speech written of 10,000 words. So if we were to just, take a sidestep into the psychological safety aspect, what would be that key thing that helps any leader break in and help that person come out of that shell and feel, okay, I'm safe here? What has been in your experience?
One thing to be done is a small talk. Now there are two different cases that you have spoke about right now.
Extremes.
One being two extremes of the stick. So in one case, he or she is wasting the meeting time, valuable time in the meeting. In the other case, he or she is again wasting the valuable meeting time, because you have to again invest some time going on to one-on-ones with that person.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that can be done to avoid these is, so I always believe prevention is better than cure, right? It's always the thing. One thing is to establish the ground rules. The moment the sprint begins, establish the ground rules. And luckily, in Scrum and the Agile, we have all these rules written.
Yeah.
Right? So, of course, still explicitly telling them, having an Agile coach take a session for the Scrum teams also helps. And then kind of building those rules, and then maybe having your lunches together, having a friend at the workplace. All these things also make a difference. Now, this will help them prevent. Now, in case you are not able to prevent, then you have to cure. Now, how to cure? How do you cure is maybe again having a very small casual conversation with that person, telling them that it's okay, man, absolutely fine. You speak out what you want to. Or if that person is speaking a lot, tell them that try to be a bit crisp.
Right.
That's where the leader has to use a situational leadership style and then adapt based on the circumstance.
Got it. So I think it boils down to being relatable to the person, because again, in an Indian context, typically it happens that the power distance is always there, right? In some varying degrees. So if you break that mold by doing things along with them, talking about things apart from usual work, right? So I think that is where you become a little more relatable, or people might feel that, hey, this person is not here, they're actually with me, at the same on the level, like they say, right? So that definitely, yes, it does work even in my experience, and that's something I try to do a lot. I'm not that great at small talk, but I have made an effort to get better at small talk.
It's called as the colloquially we can call it the bro code or Dan code. So we always have these two types of managers, right? One manager who we feel that, okay, grumpy face, and then we'll not approach this person. But there is always that manager who will be like, okay, bro, let's tell me. This is what
tell me
what's
happening.
So I think the later is always the better. Especially with the current generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha.
Correct. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you cannot just have this holier than thou, or sitting on that high horse kind of an attitude. And I mean, beyond generations, I think it makes sense for leaders to be relatable to the team, because at the end of the day, it's not the leader sitting and doing the work, it is a team who's doing it. But there has to be someone who brings order to the chaos. You can't do that without being someone who people can look up to, who people can relate to. More importantly, people can trust. If the trust is not there, then it's kind of like I'm doing this because he's in this position and I'm in a different position, right? And that never works in the long run. Cool, man. So this has been some really good discussion, Santosh, and I thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
This episode has touched upon some really important points, and again, I want to reiterate this point here. It doesn't matter where in the hierarchy you stand, whether it's your own company, whether it's the company you're employed in. You as a person can do a lot, provided you see yourself like that. Again, going back to that anecdote of the janitor, right? If you see a janitor's role, it's a very menial role. Not many people would want to do it. But at the end of the day, that person can think that because I'm keeping these things clean, these people have their life is a bit easier and they're able to do their job effectively. So indirectly, the janitor has his or her hand in making sure that the rocket goes up safely, right? I think that's the attitude we need to have. So with that, again, I thank you so much, Santosh, for your time. And guys, I hope you enjoyed watching this episode. We will have audio episodes coming out shortly. In the meantime, if there are any suggestions of any more topics that you would like to have us cover, to let me know. The email is in the show notes. Santosh's LinkedIn link will be in the show notes as well. The QR code is here. You can pause and scan it as well. And with that, I take your leave. Have a good one. Take care. This is the end of Scrum Call. So far, no impediments. Alrighty, guys, that's all we had for today. And I thank you for joining us for yet another episode. We hope you learned something valuable and it ignited your passion for Agile. We truly appreciate your time. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider the opportunity to join this fledgling community by becoming a subscriber and helping to spread the knowledge by liking and sharing this episode among your circles and even your Agile teams. Finally, to make it worth your time with us, I want you to know that your interaction is what keeps Scrum Call relevant and exciting. Leave us a comment or drop an email at scrumcall.feb17@gmail.com. That is scrumcall.f for father, E for egg, B for baby, and the numbers 17. scrumcall.feb17@gmail.com. Share your thoughts, your suggestions, or simply tell us what is it that you would like us to cover in future episodes. Until next time, remember, Agile is common sense in practice.